I think we can all generally accept that the standards between men and women are not equal, especially when it comes to dating and mating. Um, they're just not. And you've had some women complain about this, right? A man can sleep around with multiple different women and be celebrated, and a woman can sleep around with multiple different men and be called all kinds of hoes and sluts or whatever, right? There's a push to try to balance, the scales there. That's just one example. But another example where I think standards are not clear and standards are not the same, especially in the Black community, is when it comes to interracial relationships. And how, in my opinion, if a Black man dates out, it does not matter what behavior he tries to do to improve the Black community. If that man is laid up there with a non-Black woman, he will never fully be respected.
If you put in the work and you have the history, who cares who you marry?
I already answered that question, and I told you, I don't care how much work you put in. If you don't commit yourself to a Black woman, ultimately you wasn't totally committed to the struggle.
Even Frederick
Douglass has to be criticized, as I did on The Breakfast Club. Now, it has to be put in context. He didn't marry the white woman until he was an old man, after his wife, Anna Murray Douglass, of 50 years, a blue black chocolate woman through whom all my cousins were born. He was an old man when he did it, but nonetheless, he did it. And yes, he has to be criticized on that, because a Black man needs to be with a Black woman. And it is a contradiction. I don't care how much work you think you've done for Black folks to not commit yourself to a Black woman.
On the flip side, a Black woman, if she dates a white man, if she dates a non-Black man, that does not necessarily disqualify her from being pro-Black. And it does not disqualify her from being somebody who believes in the empowerment of Black people, specifically Black women.
Dear Black girl, please remember your value lies elsewhere. Your value is deep within your heart, the way you love, the way you give. Your value is in your resilience, your willingness to forgive.
And I want to share with you some examples. Here's a little tweet that I shared, just that kind of broke this down. It says, Black women have the option of dating white men without being labeled a sellout. Serena Williams, Keke Palmer, Diana Ross, Nina Simone, Maya Angelou, Eartha Kitt. I mean, these are just a few off the top of my head. You know, all Black women who very much talked about being Black, the Black experience, spoke about Black female issues, and were with white men. It was never a problem when they spoke on Black issues. And some of them to this day are very much celebrated and hailed as Black women who were key in helping to improve the Black community and helping to support and uplift the Black community. They are held in the highest regard from men and women, right? From women and men in the Black community. But on the flip side, you have Black men like Byron Allen, who's invested literally millions into the Black community, Don Peebles, to name a few. Think of Michael Jordan, right? Who had a Black wife before, now he has a Cuban wife, and he's just a few examples. These are Black men who have given money, who have donated to the Black community, but they will never fully be accepted as being pro-Black or as having helped improve the Black community because they have a non-Black spouse. And so these are just really small anecdotal examples, but it's something that I have observed, and I'm sure many of you guys have observed. Now, when it comes to interracial relationship, I think it's important to understand why this imbalance could be. Part of the reasons we see there being oftentimes a different reaction when Black women date out versus when Black men date out, I think it's partially connected to the history in this nation. And just to give an example, right? So we know there were anti-miscegenation laws that happened for a really long time, but those anti-miscegenation laws really targeted Black men. Many of the earliest stereotypes connected to Black America were connected to this idea that Black men were going around taking advantage of these like innocent white women. These like brutish Black men needed to be, they needed to be handled, and they needed to be washed over, right? And you see this idea in things like Birth of a Nation. If we understand some of the most popular lynchings we know of today, the Emmett Till, right? Like, they were all birthed out of this idea that there was a Black man here trying to take advantage of a white woman. Like, so many lynchings, so many false lynchings, so many false accusations were all over a Black man trying to get with a white woman, literally. And so anti-miscegenation laws were oftentimes targeted to Black men, and oftentimes became an excuse for them to be lynched or for them to be wrongly accused. So there has been a history of literal criminal action being taken towards a Black man who's dated out or even attempted to do anything with a white woman. Now, on the flip side, it has not been the same for Black women. Black women and white men have had a sexual relationship for hundreds of years. That wasn't necessarily criminalized. Now, although anti-miscegenation was legal, if a Black woman was sleeping with a white man, there was not the same legal repercussion as there was for Black men, right? We saw this oftentimes at the plantation. It was very common for Black women, unfortunately, to be taken advantage of their slave masters, but there's also times when it was consensual. And so that sexual relationship between white men and Black women has been so common. It's been going on since the plantation, and even during the time of Reconstruction, Jim Crow, whatever, it was still going on. Again, some of it was forced, some of it was consensual, but there wasn't the same stigma. There wasn't the same criminality associated with it. If a Black woman and a white man were sleeping together, it'd kind of be like, okay, that's her property, no big deal. But my point is, because we see literally the law treated Black men who slept with white women differently, they prosecuted them differently than Black women who were with white men. I think that perception has bled over into today, into how we see it today, where we see when Black women date out, it's usually not looked down upon as much. And sometimes it can even be glamorized, whereas when Black men do it, there's still always this usually negative stigma. It's like he hates his mom, hates Black people, or he can't handle a strong Black woman, whatever the idea may be. But there's sometimes a stigma from this. And I think those perceptions can be really closely tied to the history. And so I wanted to talk about that. And I also now want to point to a few comments that I think make really tease out how the history of the interracial relationship continues to impact people's belief today. Let's check it out. Okay, so it says, Black women have the right to choose better for ourselves. We date out to experience true love and better treatment. Most Black men date out to spite Black women. Nobody cares who Black men are with until they bash Black women. Nobody has an issue with Jamie Foxx, who only likes white women. So I don't agree with literally anything she says, obviously. I mean, obviously people care about who Black men date, so much so that there were literally laws created to keep them in check. And they were oftentimes to get persecuted and lynched if there was even a hint that they could have even whistled at a white woman, right? So we know historically that's not true. Black women talk about who Black men date all the time. Intercolorism, featurism, texturism, like those are all complaints about white men's preference and supposedly Black men's preference. So I don't necessarily agree with that. But also notice how when Black women date out, it's for positive reasons. It's not because she's self-hating. It's not because she doesn't like herself. It's not because of colorism, featurism. It's just none of that. It's because she wants to be treated with love. We've heard this. This isn't the first time. This is a common idea. But see how when Black women do it, it's for self-love. When Black women do it, it's for self-hate. And why is that? What proof do we have? What have there been studies? How do we know this is true? Or is this just narrative? Here's another one. Black women are actually celebrated when they date white men. I kind of agree, they actually are. I mean, hence the first tweet was literally like, yeah, when Black women do it, it's better. It's because they love themselves. When they date white men or light-skinned men, they don't get labeled a colorist. Never. When Black women date light-skinned, dark-skinned men, or light-skinned or white men, they're not labeled a colorist. I agree. I mentioned this with Keke Palmer. We've never seen her with a dark-skinned man. As far as I can tell, they've all been light or it's not Black, which is fine. I'm not tripping, but I'm just saying, like, that was someone else. Like Usher, right? He had Black woman. I think his first wife was dark-skinned, and then they've gotten like consecutively lighter. People are taking note of that. People are taking note of who he's in relationship with. Keke Palmer, no one really cares. What's it? Simone Biles. And listen, I think that her and her relationship with her husband is the cutest thing ever. I have no issue. I think they seem lovely. They seem like an amazing couple. I hope they flourish. But no one's calling her a colorist. I don't see Black men like, oh, look at Simone Biles. She's over there. These light-skinned men. And they don't care. It's like, whatever. She's doing her thing. You know what I mean? Never gets called that. Whoopi Goldberg. Has she ever been with a Black man? I don't even know. Serena Williams, Jodie Turner-Smith, and these are like dark-skinned women, right? They're not like ambiguous. These are like unambiguously Black women. My point is, these are all lovely, beautiful Black women who have a pretty long documented history of being with either light-skinned or just non-Black men. Nobody cares. No terms of being a colorist. No ideas of them selling people out. Some of them are actually being celebrated. Keke Palmer, she recently did a speech about, being pro-Black and celebrating Black women. Like, So that is my point. I know this is all anecdotal evidence, but y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I think y'all can agree with me on this one. I don't think I'm crazy. This is a clap back. Girls stop. They call Black women who date white men bed, and swirlers all day. There are terms out there, and I'm not going to sit here and say that a Black woman who dates out never experiences pushback. I wouldn't say that. But my point is, if we're thinking about the general perception, and overall, I think that just the general perception, how society and how Black community views interracial relationships, I tend to think, my analysis is that I think there tends to be a bit more acceptance for when Black women do out because of the narrative around it, and quite frankly, because of the history, because of the laws and the criminality associated with when one did it versus how kind of passive it was and more lenient it was when women did it. And that certainly had an impact on the culture. So again, that's not to say that Black men and women don't both maybe experience some pushback here and there, but I do think it's different. And this is why you can have, to this day, a dark-skinned Black woman date out, never dated dark-skinned Black men, or never dated Black men, period, and still be considered a pro-Black, or still be put into spaces where she's speaking for Black women, where she's speaking for Black people, and nobody's really tripping. And for the most part, can still be put into places where she's speaking for Black men, or still be put in places where she's speaking for Black women. So anyways, that's what I got. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree, or do you think I got it wrong? Did I miss something? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later.